Good evening. US President Donald Trump said he has formed the framework of a future deal on Greenland after meeting NATO chief Mark Rutte during the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos. Now, Trump said new tariffs are no longer needed to punish European countries for opposing his plans, but he restated criticism, saying NATO hasn't given the US anything, despite trillions of dollars being spent by previous presidents. So with NATO facing intense pressure on multiple different fronts, how does the 76-year-old organization respond? Well, earlier I sat down with NATO's Deputy Director General Radmila Shekerinska to find out what NATO does next. Deputy Secretary General, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Well, what a time to be in a leadership position in NATO. There's an awful lot going on. Your boss, Mark Rutte, has just had that well-publicised meeting with President Trump in Davos. You're under a lot of pressure at the moment, not just from Trump supporters, but also from the other side, from European leaders, people saying that the Secretary General has not been tough enough, that he's acquiesced too easily to the demands of the President. With all this going on, do you ever fear for the future of the organisation?
Well, actually, from what I heard and read after Davos and this meeting between the Secretary General and the US President, it was quite a lot of praise from both sides because it was really seen as an effort of thoughtful diplomacy to actually come up with agreement on many things. And I actually think, if you look at the big question that you have asked me, that every time when people would start posing the question, we would end up with a solution meaning more NATO, not less NATO. And this is very clearly the takeaway from this discussion between Secretary General and US President, but also between the Secretary General and quite a number of allies, including Denmark and Greenland representatives, that actually what Secretary General tried and accomplished was to focus the discussion on our security, collective security. By talking a lot about the need for Arctic security, especially when you have in mind what has been going on lately. We have seen not only Russia's interest, Russia much more visible presence there. They have been establishing an Arctic command. They have been reopening old Soviet military sites, deep water ports, airfields. They have opened new ones. And they have also tested some of their novel weapons in the Arctic. We have seen also Chinese interest with regards to Arctic. And the approach that NATO has had, having in mind that out of the 8 Arctic countries, 7 are NATO allies, is to focus on what can we do more in order to support our collective security, by protecting the Arctic, by coming up with arrangements that can guarantee our security also in the Arctic. And this has been I would say, the good result that almost all that I have heard praised. Because, within the alliance, sometimes there are different views. But what prevails is this sense that we share the same commitment. We need security, and we need this collective security in order to guarantee every inch of our territory.
Yeah, that need for security, never more important than it is now, with the way the world is changing so fast. And one of the things we've seen is that different parts of the world have started to become more important geopolitically. We're here in Baku, Azerbaijan, South Caucasus, Central Asia, becoming increasingly important as this conduit between East and West. Just like to get your reflections on Azerbaijan and also more widely the potential that you see in partnering more and more with Central Asia and South Caucasus.
The security of the region, of the Caucasus, matters to us. It's close to our borders, it affects Euro-Atlantic security, and this is the whole logic of our partnerships, to try and cooperate on issues that are mutually beneficial. We have a history of 3 decades of partnership with Azerbaijan. And it has been a process that was demand-driven. I mean, we really discussed issues which could be important for Azerbaijan, but also for NATO allies and for the alliance as a whole. And we have seen in the past that Azerbaijan has both profited from this partnership, but also contributed to the partnership. Let me just mention the contribution that Azerbaijan has made to our missions in Afghanistan. They have been a dedicated partner. They have contributed the troops. They were actually the last one to leave Kabul back a few years ago. So this is commitment from the Azerbaijan side. But we have also provided Azerbaijan with a framework of cooperation that has benefited their security, their military, their reforms. For example, we have supported them through the so-called defense education program. So really working on understanding defense, modernizing their forces, but also on issues such as science for peace projects, projects of demining, projects that really affect human security. And this is how we want to proceed. Just recently, the Secretary General has decided, and we will very soon have a special representative focusing on South Caucasus and Central Asia. This clearly sets and clearly defines our commitment to the region. And what we have seen, especially the breakthrough in terms of bilateral relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the peace agreement, the peace negotiations, they are an investment in a region that has struggled with instability for quite some time. So they are a concrete contribution, and we see our future cooperation with Azerbaijan as taking this really strong partnership up to a next level. So we have more or less concluded the discussions on a new program. It is called ITPP, Individually Tailored Partnership Program between NATO and Azerbaijan. And we do hope that in the time ahead of us, we will be able to conclude this process, and we will be able to provide this framework for an enhanced cooperation with Azerbaijan.
And just looking more widely, I think it's fair to say that in some senses, multilateral organizations generally have kind of gone out of fashion, in a sense. We've seen a strong push, particularly from Washington, to challenge in some ways, increase criticism, critique of the way in which multilateral organizations are working. How do you see this conversation? Do you think there's room for more and different kinds of organizations, or do you think it's important to consolidate authority within the ones that we've got? What's your response to those that consistently seem to challenge multilateral organizations wherever they are?
Well, let me focus on NATO. And this has been, in a way, the goal of this Secretary General since the beginning of his mandate. We focus on core business. We focus on what we do the best. And what he asked allies and what he delivered, especially at the Hague summit, was a razor-focused approach on security, on defense, on stronger defense and deterrence. And this is how we have shown that NATO, in times of need, in times of really global challenges to security and to peace, is successful because it adapts to the pressing needs of today. The Hague summit was, for some people, a huge test for NATO, right? I have heard all the different comments and questions and concerns and the different analysis. But in The Hague, we have managed really to deliver a historic success by having 32 leaders, which is not an easy crowd, 32 leaders agree on essential things. They have agreed on the threat that we are faced with, which is Russia and terrorism. We have agreed that because of these threats, we need to invest more in our defense. And this was seen with our commitment to a 5% of GDP pledge to defense and defense-related expenses.
And the Secretary General was extremely robust in his defense of President Trump's role in securing that success. Because
it is true. I mean, in 2014, allies agreed to spend 2% of GDP. And still, it was only last year that we have managed to have all allies at 2%. US President Trump was very clear that he expects European allies and Canada to really take a balanced part of the weight when it comes to security. And these are all countries that can actually really provide for the security of Europe and the Euro-Atlantic. So the burden sharing thing was an issue for all almost administrations in the past. But unfortunately, it was not until now that we were able to deliver big time a success, a commitment by all to invest in our security. And it is only fair that European allies and Canada do the appropriate share of this burden sharing. And this is why Hague was a success, because it created additional unity before allies. It showed this unity, but it also showed a continued support to Ukraine. So on all three difficult issues, we were able to agree, and this is clearly a signal that NATO is prepared for the future, and that NATO is facing this future with strong self-confidence.
Strong self-confidence. Deputy Secretary General, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.